So, even with a cold, let's talk about Formula One. The 1950 Monaco Grand Prix marks the return of the Monte Carlo circuit on the Grand Prix calendar, following a year's absence after the death of the city-state's Prince Louis II. After a year of mourning, Prince Raniero III made the circus come back to the Principality, and the race saw the debut of the Scuderia Ferrari team, with their drivers Alberto Ascari, Luigi Villoresi and Raymond Sommer. The Ferrari 125's weight-power ratio can compete with the Alfetta's, but the commentator thinks he can balance things out with the efficiency of his car having to make less refueling stops than the others. The new cars introduced to this venue were the Ferrari 125, which first appeared at the 1948 Italian Grand Prix and got Ferrari's first F1 victory at the Garda circuit in the hands of Giuseppe Farina himself. In 1949, Tony van der Wel, future founder of Vanwall, got himself a 125 and called it Thin Wall Special, making it one of the first ever sponsor appearance on the body of an F1 car, as the name advertised his bearings factory, which even Ferrari himself used to buy from. The second new car was the Cooper JAP T12, or JAP T12, I'm gonna say JAP, which was brought to the race by Harry Schell, first American to take part in the World Championship race. It was the first ever rear-engine car to take part in the World Championship as well, and it could race in both Formula 3 with a JAP 500cc one-cylinder engine, and in Formula 2 with a JAP V2 1000cc engine. And as it was eligible to race in Formula 1, Shell brought it to Monte Carlo equipped with a 1.1-litre V2 motorcycle engine. God, I'm used to say V12, V2 is so hard to say. The third and final new car was the Simca Gordini Type 15, which was by all accounts a very difficult car to handle and was plagued by reliability issues. But nevertheless, in the hands of Fangio, it managed to defeat the 158 Alfa Romeo in one and only non-championship race. So the entry list looked like this. This time there were a lot of French drivers on the grid. As I presume you all know, Monaco is geographically close to France. Andres Simon also cancelled his entry prior to the race. The Works Talbot Lago team showed up with only one driver, while those who raced for the team in Britain got themselves a Talbot Lago car of their own and participated as privateers. Reg Parnell wasn't retained to drive for Alfa Romeo. The qualifying session was split into two sessions, which took place on Thursday and on Saturday. On Thursday, the Alfettas were in excellent form and Fangio took pole in front of Farina with a time of 1:50.2. The Saturday qualifying session though was cut short due to an accident involving Alfredo Pian. During his hot lap, the Argentinian driver slipped on an oil patch and shunted heavily into the guardrail, breaking his leg. This accident saw Pian sidelined for this race and every other race following. With this incident, qualifying was over, and the first 5 places on the grid were determined by the Thursday qualifying lap times, and all others were going to be set by their time on the Saturday run. This greatly impacted the Ferraris, with Villoresi, who had set the second fastest time on Saturday, now demoted to 6th place on the grid. After qualifying, so the top 3 were Fangio, Farina and a great Jose Froilan Gonzalez. Pozzi, Cabantu, Levet and Biondetti didn't attend qualifying. Shell had experienced multiple problems during practice and didn't set a lap time. However, he vowed to continue, and so he was allowed to start from the back of the grid. At the start, Farina got away well and took the lead from Fangio, who followed him while Villoresi jumped up to 3rd. Farina's lead though didn't last long, and after a few corners Fangio retook the lead of the race. At the back, the waves of the harbour were crashing against the shoreline, spraying water over the circuit. The chasing Farina spun on the water, crashed into the barrier, which made him bounce back into the path of the oncoming cars. Fagioli spun wide, ending into the barriers himself, while Gonzalez crashed into Farina's car and started a big pile-up of cars. Farina, Rosier, Manson, de Graaf and Reed, Trintignant, Harrison, Roll and Shell were all out in Tabac Corner. Both Fagioli and Gonzalez tried to keep going, but Fagioli only managed to bring his car back to the pit lane and then retired. Gonzalez meanwhile attempted to complete one more lap, but his ruptured fuel tank burst, causing his car to crash at the gasworks hairpin and burst into flames. The Argentinian driver jumped out but still suffered second-degree burns on his arms. Despite the pileup, the only injured drivers were miraculously only the Berto Gonzalez and Franco Roll, who had broken an arm in the crash. The wreckage forced the other drivers to navigate the cars at Tabac Corner as if they were another chicane, with Prince Beera even stopping to complain to the marshals that they weren't clearing the track fast enough. Imagine that! This slow maneuver meant that Villoresi stalled his Ferrari while going through the wrecked cars and dropped back to last place. Villoresi then started an amazing last to question mark challenge of sorts, which by lap 14 saw him back into third place. On lap 24, Fangio got the fastest lap of the Grand Prix with a 1:50.0, and on lap 31, Villoresi caught Ascari and duelled for second place. On lap 36, Etancelin retired with an oil leak, and on lap 38, when Ascari had to refuel, Villoresi, who had stopped the lap before, got the jump on him and took second place. Villoresi was even attempting to go and get Fangio, who had disappeared in the lead of the race. But Fangio's comfortable lead meant that he was able to take his refueling stop and still come out in the lead. Villoresi had managed an incredible drive, but luck wasn't on his side that day, as on lap 63 his rear axle broke and was forced to retire. Fangio was so far ahead that after Villoresi DNF'd, it took another pit stop and still came out in the lead. In the end, Fangio won, having lapped the entire field, with Ascari in second place and local hero Luis Chiron in third. Raymond Sommer with the Ferrari came on fourth, ahead of Prince Beera, Bob Gerard and Belgian driver Johnny Claes. And that's it. There were only 7 finishes, with most of the grid having been wiped out by water at Tabac Corner. After the race though, Fangio was concerned about all the injuries that his fellow friends have suffered. After the ceremony, he took the time to drive Pian to an orthopedic hospital in Bologna, and then came back to Monaco to drive Gonzalez to a specialist burns unit in Italy. The aftermath of the Monaco Grand Prix saw Fangio tied for first place in the championship with Farina, and the Argentinian conquered the first Grand Chelem of F1 history, having taken pole, fastest lap, and having led every lap of the race. And that's how the first F1 World Championship Monaco Grand Prix went. Join me next week as we'll cover the 1950 Indianapolis 500. Gonna have to do a lot of research on that one. Alright, cheers and have a good day.